Ukraine is a crucible for the ability of the Western democracy to push back against this tide of autocracy that seems to be taking over the world. Return of industrial warfare to Europe, something we really haven't seen since 1945, but it's back, which is why this has shifted officially to a war of attrition, a war that will be won by the side who can gear up its industry and the populace to fight long haul, what is commonly referred to as a war of attrition. It had began 2 years ago in February 2022 with Russia taking a swing at Kiev from the east. They moved westward from the Donbass to try and take this land bridge to Crimea, which they seized and annexed in 2014. They got stopped for a while at Mariupol, if you remember the siege of Azovstal steel plant, and of course the swing they took at Kiev from Belarus in the north. They were stopped again at Hostomel, and the favor began to swing back to the Ukrainians with a surprise counteroffensive from Kiev and a surprise counteroffensive across the Dnieper in Kherson. Of course, more recently, in the summer of 23, they had their big offensive to try and cut the land bridge in half, although this was not successful. After several months of weapons delays, logistics, allowing the Ruskies to really dig in their defensive positions, Ukraine only pushed about 30 kilometers. Once again, the favor began to swing back to the Russians again. Due to ammo shortages and bickering in the West, a couple weeks ago, the Russians were successful in taking Avdiivka, a strategically important route that the Ukrainians had been defending since the annexation back in 2014. From here, the Russians have a straightforward path to take the rest of the Donbass, Putin's minimum stated goal in this war. As the rest of the year goes on, the Russians will try to take the rest of the Donbass with their infantry and infamous meat wave tactics. It's important to remember these are human beings. Ukraine may try to put some pressure on Crimea, and the Russians are pressurizing the Donbass region. Technological parity causing the lines to stagnate with little movement either way, and that's where we come back to the war of attrition. Ukraine is a crucible for the ability of the Western democracy to push back against this tide of autocracy that seems to be taking over the world. The global South, as we call it, is standing back to see what happens. And if the Western world is seen to be a paper tiger of sorts, seen not to be able to deliver on its commitments, then the rest of the world will take note of that and will begin to lean towards Putin and Xi Jinping in China and other authoritarians on the assumption that the rest of the world is really now moving in their direction.